Hey, this is Karen Coaches Corner Chats, and today I've got Tristan Tillette on with me. Tristan, give us a little bit of background on what you're up to, where you're at, and all that good stuff.
So I'm located in Birmingham, Alabama. Originally born and raised in New Orleans. I'm a coach's son, so I kind of grew up around sport. He coached. I'm 45. He's been coaching for 47 years. So literally, like that's the life that I've known. Where we grew up in inner city New Orleans, he was a high school and then a college basketball coach. He migrated here to Birmingham as he got his first major college opportunity. He was an assistant here at Division I, head coach here locally in Birmingham, which was kind of my first entry into the coaching profession, so to speak, full time. I coached Division I basketball for 6 years and then had my first child about 17 years ago, and kind of knew that that wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted to have as a parent and father, because I knew just the travel and the rigors of what that schedule would be, wouldn't lend itself to always being as present as I could. Much to the chagrin of my kids, probably, as they might say now. But got out of that realm of coaching and got into actually the sports performance realm, where this was back in 2003-04. So this was before like sports performance was like really a thing. Like there was, it was a really narrow niche. Like if you were strength conditioning, you were either going to be like a personal trainer for general fitness or work with a college. I knew I didn't want to kind of do either of those. I wanted to work with athletes. I wanted to coach. I wanted to be hands-on, with young athletes and help them reach their goals and dreams. So started a program here that grew, and then stepped away from that for a few years, and then got back into youth sports about 3 years ago and started our program, Birmingham Futsal. Again, having 3 kids who are in the youth soccer arena here, and having a wife who's actually a girls director of coaching here for a local club. Kind of saw opportunities that I thought that, a lot of times players maybe didn't get the love or the attention or the instruction or just the fun aspect of play that I think you and I probably did growing up. A lot of times we would go play just for the sake of play, which is kind of why we started our program, and it's kind of grown and evolved over the last 3 years for sure.
So I'm gonna go all the way back. So Papa Bear has been coaching for a long stinking time.
Yep.
Were you at a lot of his practices, and so were you like that full coach's kid experience that you see and hear about?
All of the above. I'd get run through the showers by his high school team. I'd get thrown in the trash can by his high school team as a 5, 6-year-old. Coach yelled at them, so they'd take it out on me. Looking back at it, I'm like, well, that's probably why they acted like jerks, because my dad was kind of hard on him probably. But it's like, I can't really yell at him, so let me take it out on this guy. But I had to me, I look at that as like a tremendously positive experience, but a lot of what I've kind of deemed as just knowledge, almost like quote, like common sense, so to speak. A lot of times, as the saying goes, like, isn't that common? Just because I grew up, around, he coached basketball, but, we played baseball and football, and soccer wasn't super big then. And it wasn't really big in the city where we were, but there was always sports on TV. It was sports, 24/7, so that's really all I knew in terms of lifestyle.
The one thing I keep hearing too is that you have like a really good self-awareness of when you got into the coaching and you started going toward that like big time basketball experience, you realize like it comes down to priorities for me. What do I want to really excel at, be coaching or as a father and a husband?
Yeah. And I mean, it was a sense of, let me think back. I was probably 14 or 15. And he had an offer. He had worked some camps at Mississippi State in Starkville, Mississippi. We were in New Orleans. He was born and raised in New Orleans. My mother was born and raised in New Orleans. Like our entire family was there. So uprooting the family for an opportunity because of just the support group that we had. And we had, my dad's mom was pretty ill at the time, and she actually passed away kind of right after he took this job due to cancer. But I had a good school situation. We had a really tight knit support group with all of our family. So it wasn't a matter of like uprooting the entire family to go from New Orleans to Starkville. Like there was no way that was going to happen. So he actually moved away. I was telling one of our staff this yesterday for about 8 or 9 months, and it was just my mom and I, and he was in Starkville. So before the season, after the season, he would trek home. It was about 3 hours or so. But from October 15th until, early March, like he was gone, where we would go to games and we get to see him then. But just knowing that when you get that call, and kind of going up the ladder of any, coaching profession, especially in college, your goal is to become a head coach at the highest level you can.
Mhm.
So if I'm coaching and I get a call from a school in, I won't name states as to alienate people, but a rural area of a certain state where I may not want to go, it's kind of like, well, I kind of have to go,
Yeah.
and my hand is forced, and I've either got to make a decision of I'm away from my family and hope it works, or hey guys, I know you love it here, but now we've got to move to this place where you have no desire to ever set foot or want to live or plant roots, but we have to do that. I wasn't willing to do that. And I wasn't willing to, kind of compromise morals and values and cut corners in coaching and maybe doing some things that weren't above board as well to try to kind of work my way up the ladder in that arena.
And it sounds like you feel like that was the right choice for you and your family.
Oh, I mean, I never people asked for maybe the 6 or 7 years kind of after that, do you miss it? Do you miss it? And it's like, I never even thought about it until they asked me. And I was like, well, I mean, I missed like maybe one slight aspect. Like I missed the games and the practice, like maybe since you asked me now that I think back, but it's not like, I had a deep regret. I filled that void of, the competitive notion of it with other things, and that's kind of what we've done with our futsal program, obviously where we've kind of just recreated a similar competitive environment, competitive arena. Like our team just went to regionals this past weekend, which was a highly competitive experience. So it's funny because we don't keep score in our league. I don't really keep scores. I'm watching our games. I'm more like the ebb and flow of the game. But my kids, will tell the other players in the program, like, just so you know, like he's probably the most competitive person like that you'll ever meet for sure. So it's just kind of funny the way things have kind of evolved over the years for sure.
That's really, really cool. So then it gets to the point where you're like, I need something to do. And you see this opportunity and it sounds like more of an opportunity, not so much for you personally, but for you to give players in the Birmingham area the opportunity to fall, like you said, fall in love with the game. So
Yep.
what was take me back to when you started working through this? How did Birmingham futsal come about? What were some of the things you had to go through to get to where you're at now?
So it was about, I guess, four to five-ish years or so ago. Gary Kernine, top notch coach and gentleman, was doing like modern soccer coach. I think maybe his first book had just come out. And he was doing some clinics kind of around. He did some in California where he'd coach. He did some in the Carolinas, kind of where he had roots. He did one in Peachtree City, Georgia, and I just reached out, via Twitter, where we had engaged a little bit and just said, hey, like if you need someone to discuss fitness or speed and agility or, conditioning aspect, kind of the physical side of the game, kind of here's what I've done. Here's what I do. I'd love to, take time, whether it's a field session or classroom, whatever you deem appropriate. And he, called the next day and we kind of hashed that out. So I made the drive over to Peachtree City, which is about 2.5 hours, kind of right in the Atlanta area, which is pretty close to where we are. My oldest son came with me. We went over and I met Alan Ewing is his name. So Alan, buddy of mine, he's a PE teacher and a coaching educator, where he had a son a couple of years younger than mine. He had been a director at some of the largest clubs in Atlanta. He had been a director of coaching education with some of them. And, we got to talking. It's like, well, a lot of times what I would see here in our environment of the youth club soccer game, I would just see it, well, maybe that's just us, versus like, well, I talked to this person here and talked to that person there. And it's kind of like, these things are kind of going on everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where my basketball background, as I explained to even my dad when he was like, what the hell is this game? Like, I've never heard of it before. I sent him a YouTube link and I said, rather than soccer in a gym, it's more like basketball with your feet. Like when it's played like, quote, like, well, when it's played the right way and the game is moving and people are, controlling the ball in the game and things are going, it looks like basketball. It doesn't look like soccer.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a pretty easy sell to me, as Alan and I kind of talked about, because he was starting his program there and said, basically asked if I would be interested. And I said, probably not right now, just, from location and kind of what I'm working on, but in the next few months, I'll get back to you. And that's that was then July of, I would guess, 2018 is when we started, because we're about 2.5 years old.
Okay. So then why specifically futsal?
I mean, the notions of it's building a player's relationship with the ball. So I'm a big, not to keep name dropping, but I'm a big like Tom Byer disciple. I
Mhm.
actually had the privilege of meeting Tom with Alan, where we do some adult pickup games. That's like, honestly, it's like the United Nations of the court. Like we'll have 40 players, and we've had 40 players from 33 different countries at one time. It's
Wow.
amazing, which is really cool. But again, like they all come, like literally they don't even speak the same language. Some of them speak no English, some of them speak broken, some of them are American and they're fluent, whatever, but they come for the ball. Like that's the language they all speak.
Yeah.
So those games end at about 11 o'clock, which is 12 o'clock Eastern, which is where Alan is. And he's like, hey, he had talked about Tom maybe being in the area. He's like, hey, he's going to be here tomorrow. Can you be here at 6:30? So I basically had 6.5 hours to sleep, shower, rest, and drive 2.5 to 3 hours over. And I'm like, absolutely, I'll be there. And had the privilege of kind of meeting Tom and just seeing, obviously he's at the entry level grassroots stage, but in any sport, I go back to when I grew up, I would have a ball in my hand, or I would have, a ball on the ground, or I would have a ball in the air, where kids, the more you love the ball, the more you're going to love the game. And we can kind of create this cyclical nature of whether you stay in the sport as a player at the highest level, or whether you stay in the sport like us as a coach, or whether you stay in the sport as an announcer, whether you stay in the sport as a, equipment manufacturer, whatever it is. I think that if we empower and impassion kids to love the ball, it's going to go a long way, and it's going to keep them involved in the game for a much longer time.
That's the idea of having 40 people there and 33 of them, like 33 different nationalities and whatever, is so cool. And then, like you said, and which I'm learning more and more, is soccer no matter where you play it. Doesn't matter if you have 5 guys that are playing, you're playing 3v2 or whatever, it's still the same rules and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's so cool that it's so universal and it brings that unity with that. So then how did you go about finding a spot to have futsal courts and what have you?
So there's a really nice kind of large scale facility, which at the time that Alan and I met, I was doing some collaborative work with a medical group, and like one of the local city governments that had just built like a big, huge sports complex where it was a big indoor, nice wood court, open space that would be 11 basketball courts, convert to 17 volleyball, with athletic training room, with meeting rooms and all this. So knew that we had an opportunity to use some of that space. And the biggest thing was, okay, like, so we have space, but like, how are we going to kind of find ins, into the community where people honestly didn't know what futsal was. They might have heard of it. And like at the time there's still no like year round option program. There's no actual program. The only other, kind of sort of futsal options that may exist would be like a winter league that one of the smaller clubs kind of runs basically for their kids to play in the winter. So kind of knowing that it was a blank canvas and we could kind of paint it to be as authentic to the actual game as it were, where like Alan and I joke, like we're futsal snobs. Like it's not played on turf. It's not played with a soccer ball in a gym. Like it's on a slick surface, either gym or sport court or outdoor concrete or tennis court, kind of material, that kind of thing, with a futsal ball. Anything other than that is soccer, which is fine, but in terms of like the benefits that people would kind of say that, the South American players get growing up, obviously Brazil, that's like the nation, where futsal is king and queen for sure. But in those cultures, they're as good as they are on the ball because they play futsal, not because they have a soccer ball. And many of them don't even have like an actual ball, as it were. They'll have something that's round or maybe oval shaped in the street with no shoes. And you have to deal with that environment, which is kind of what our goal has been, is providing an experience that, and we'll have, like, I'll say in our meeting tonight, like just a reminder, like, we're not a soccer club. And I don't say that as like a pejorative negative term, like we're good, they're not, but that's not how we operate. Like our goals are different. Our visions are different. We boil it down to, this is our game and we want our players and your kids to grow to love this game. And a big part of that is, again, their relationship with the ball.
So once you get this place, so you've got the courts, you've got a venue. How did you make that connection with the community? How did you get 40 guys to show up that want to rock and roll and play? How'd you get this out there?
So we started as a kind of a youth only. So it's been very, very, progressive and kind of stair step in nature, where our initial event was like a summer camp. So like in July, I want to say we had like these ages from these times, these ages from those times for 4 days. Leading into that, I had some, again, having kids, that play and kind of being a soccer parent myself. I had some friends and people, so I was like, hey, this is what we're going to do. So for about 2 or 3 weeks leading up to that first event, we did like some open play dates and just like, here's the ball, here's the game, come play. If you'd like something a little bit more, not serious, but like instructional, where you can actually learn techniques and, the different aspects and phases of the game. We're going to have a camp on these days. We had a whopping 16 kids turn out for the first event, and knew that like from there, our goal again was to be able to offer. I don't think that anybody who's played the game would say that futsal isn't fun. Everybody would probably say, if you've been involved, like it's maybe even more fun than the outdoor game. There's less people, there's a tighter space, there's more transition, there's more interactive. So for the attention span of a lot of youth players, in my opinion, that's probably why they burn out on the outdoor game, because frankly, they get bored because there's one ball and by the end there's 20 players on the field, not counting the goalies. Mm-hmm. But in futsal, there's one ball and there's 8 players and it's a much tighter space. So like the game doesn't lend itself to that. So knew that we wanted to kind of roll this program out eventually, use the camp. And then we had another smaller venue where we had done, we built a relationship and we did a lot of training there. We had our first kind of community event was called the Futsal Fiesta. And we had from 16, all of those 16. And then we had another, I think 30 or so. So we had about 45 kids and kind of grew that into our first year of like and this is a nebulous term because everybody has an academy these days. Mm-hmm. But like our futsal quote academy, that's basically the term we would use for like year round play, where these families right now we're at, I want to say 55 players. So we have 6 teams and then some other kind of pools of age groups. So we've grown into now we have, again, 6 teams of players who play year round. After about 6 months of just the youth arm, I was like, okay, so many of you have parents that obviously play and have expressed interest, and us wanting to build that family base and kind of that community feel, much like an actual, football club where mom and dad come and dad's playing on the first team and little Johnny or little Pedro or Hector's on the years, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of what we started to do, where we did, it was about 6 months after we started the youth, then we started rolling out our adult pickup. And that started much like, hey, come play. There'd be some nights where we'd have 3v3. There'd be some nights where we'd have, okay, we can play 5v5. Great. And over time that grew and grew and grew. Cause I take it pretty, seriously, where like you have to reserve your spot. So you're not going to show up one night and there'll be 80 people and you don't get to play. Like we're going to keep the numbers between here and here. Mm-hmm. So you're guaranteed from 8:30 to 10:30 that you're going to get a huge amount of court time. Some night we'll have maybe 5 or 6 teams where winners will stay and that kind of stuff. But that's what that's grown and evolved into over the last 2 years.
So I am curious, as selfishly, because I am in the process of trying to get just even miniature courts put into our community here in Middletown to give kids just opportunities to go play pickup ball. So I love the fact that, so when those first 16 came, was there a part of you was like, this might not work out? Or was there a thought of like, let's just be patient and let's just keep doing what we're doing and we'll see what happens?
I don't know, honestly, if ever in my life I've ever thought this won't work out with anything, which is probably ultimately my downfall. Like I'm on Zoom, so people can't see, but like, again, I come from a basketball background. I'm 5'9", 170 pounds, and I've played college basketball. So like, if I can do that, like anybody can do anything, honestly. And that's always been my mindset, where it's just, I showed up and like 16, is it 50 or 60? That would have been great, but like 16 is greater than 0.
Yeah.
Which up until then, like 0 kids had actually played real futsal in Birmingham. So like victory for us, you know. And again, I'm a big Gary V disciple, which is kind of like where all of this stuff stems from, because the position and kind of profession that I was in was more kind of at for a few years was more like kind of corporate mainstream fitness. And I knew that I didn't want to do that long term. And I tell this story for people who, you know, haven't really heard of Gary or any of his work. I was targeted through Facebook and his stuff would come across my feed and it was like, oh, this is sales stuff. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. And I don't know what sparked my interest this day, but like I clicked on the video that like one day after getting targeted 37 or 58 different times, and it was Daily V 101, which was a tribute from like a fan in Portugal to him, of like basically a montage of a lot of his speeches and, you know, little sound bites and that. And after the 9-minute video, I told my wife, hey, like what I've been doing, I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore. And within a week it was over and we started the futsal program because I knew that that's what I wanted to do.
Wow, this is so awesome because a lot of people, and this is why this is what's so cool about this podcast opportunity is to hear these stories. Is so many you see on Twitter, and you see all these kids that are 5 stars, and you see all the I'm Division 1 coach doing this, and so a lot of people listening to this would look at it and go, Tristan, that sounds like you wouldn't you want to just to chase that big dream of being a D1 coach? You've been on TV, you've been on networks, all the money, all this kind of stuff. And I think it's so cool that when you peel it all away, it's like, yeah, but I want to have something I'm passionate about, that I love, that I enjoy. Um, and the impact that you're making, like you said, and why I wanted to bring it up was I think so many times we go into things with an idea, and then when only a handful of people show up, you're like, well, this what the idea is not going to work.
Yeah.
And I know because I'm a huge Gary V disciple as well. And he constantly pushes patience, patience, patience. Like just keep doing what you're doing and make connections. And I keep hearing relationships and just building, like the idea of like, hey, I've got your kids in the mix. I know you guys you're salivating on the sidelines to want to get on this court and play. So
Mm-hmm.
here, we'll let you guys go.
Yep.
So you said now, so I can play futsal all year long.
Yep. And one thing real quick, just to like refresh back to some of the things you said is, and I thought about this like when I was coaching. So my first 2 years coaching Division 1 basketball, we went to the big dance. We went to the NCAA tournament. Only 2 years in school history. So I'm like, oh, this is easy. We didn't go ever again. Like my next 4 years, we didn't go. So it's like I tell people, like when they would ask that, like, well, like, don't you miss this and that? I'm like, I miss that. But like when you see, so like if you see Coach K on the sidelines at Duke, you see that environment, obviously pre-COVID, the Cameron crazies, like you see that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see him in July when out of the 31 days in July, he's on the road for 28 and only gets to see his family for 3. You don't see the fact that he's got to miss his kid's 16th birthday. They don't show you all that. You know, they show you the good stuff. You see the trophy, you see him cutting down the nets, and like that's what you want. But like we had a phrase, and again, coach's son, like when you pick up the stick. So if I'm going to pick up this pen, I pick up both ends. So I'm going to get the good and I'm going to get the bad with it. So you better be prepared for that. You know, and that was something where, yeah, the good is great, but the good of this isn't going to outweigh the fact that I'm not going to be able to go to my kids' games. I'm not going to be able to be at their birthday because they're born in March and April. So we may be either at a tournament or we'll be in recruiting or we'll be something. And like, ultimately I've got to be okay with missing that, you know. Maybe if they were born in July or August, that'd have been better, but they weren't. So, you know, who knows? But it was a matter of, again, just knowing as we move forward, and all we know is what we know. So we all have a certain, you know, level of good experience and bad experience in life. And growing up as a coach's son in a community of, you know, players and coaches and families, and like how tight knit everyone was, and seeing that not really present in today's youth sport, you know, regardless whether it be soccer, basketball, football, like, you know, and it may exist somewhere. I just know like around us, it wasn't there. It didn't feel like, you know, a community. It didn't feel like family. It felt like, well, I'm in it for my kid. And if I can do this, say this, align with this person, then I can get one up and I can make this team. And ultimately, like, it doesn't matter, man. What matters are the relationships we're building and the lessons that our kids are learning, so that if they do become a college player, great. If they do become a pro, great. If they do make a national team, great. But like, what are they learning, and are they getting that on their own merit? Are they getting that because they want to do it and they're putting their nose down and they're working toward that goal? Or are they getting that because it's political, or whatever, what's behind the scenes creating that opportunity? Which is, I knew when we started our program, I wanted it to go back to, you're probably like myself, probably like an 80s baby. I wanted it to be like that. Like when you would go in the neighborhood, you didn't have to show your birth certificate to prove that you belonged. It wasn't, oh, sorry, only U12s can play on this lawn. U8s played with U16s. And if you were good enough, you were old enough, which is kind of the way that our program is now, where we have some kids that, and this is part of what I'll talk about tonight, like, kids need to play. They need to play even so they can kind of fit in and see their level. They need to play up so they can get challenged. And they need to play down so that they can exhibit, leadership, and they can have that pressure and stress of, when you play, quote, down, when you play, either you're the best player at your age, when you play true age and you're the best, then your role is to be the best, and that's something where I had this talk with our winter kids this week. Is usually when coaches use the term role player, that's seen as like a negative. Everybody has a role. So in soccer, if Lionel Messi isn't the best player on the field, guess what? Barca don't win, because that's his role. You've got to be the best. If LeBron isn't the best on the court, the Lakers don't win, more than likely.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to be the best, versus like the term you use is just self-awareness. Like, who am I? What am I capable of doing right now? And can I bring my best to this day, this court, this time, this game, this training session, this regional semifinal, whatever the event is, am I able to do that? So those are the lessons, that we're trying to instill through the sense of community and parent involvement. And our other program, like Little Ballers, which is kind of our 4 and 5-year-olds, that's comical for sure.
Yeah.
But just having an opportunity, again, where we can kind of have the whole family involved and create that community feel.
I love it. Love it all. So and you mentioned earlier you had a group that just went to regional. So in the span of 2.5 years, you have a crop of players that has risen to the level where they can compete. It sounds like at a pretty good clip. And then my other thought was, who's coaching these kids?
So in terms of our youth program, we're part of like US Youth Futsal, which is like the major, quote, governing body over the youth side of the game. So we're one of their academies here in the US. So basically, the one deal that we have with parents is, if you would like to be part of kind of this program, here's what you get. You get X amount of days a week. You get, any camps and events and clinics, you get a huge discount, blah, 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 blah. Our one ask is, the only travel we have is regionals, which is, these days and times, typically, like we just went to Charlotte, because that's, it's like 5.5 hours, so nothing too bad. But we're still a little bit isolated in terms of, like, obviously futsal, kind of where we are, didn't exist, and kind of around us, we're still a little bit of a satellite. So that's a bit of a trek, but it's better, than going to Phoenix or something like that. So that's kind of the one, I guess, stretch of commitment that we ask from parents. And I'm like, if you don't want to go, that's fine. But all we need to know is, like, kind of what your commitment is, so that we can prepare for that. Where we had 5 teams go last year, and much like any, youth sports organization, you'll have some that overperform, some that perform to the level of expectation, and some that may, quote, underperform. This year we had 6 teams, which, again, we had some do, better than expected, about like we expected, and less. Our high school team, which we call it that because, again, it's age group. So it's our 2003 boys, but we called it our high school team because there weren't that many 2003 boys on the team. So we played, 1 game, 2 game, we win, we tie, we this, we that. And then we play a team where basically I'm doing the math. I know, like, based on goal difference, if we win or tie, we're in. If we lose by 5 or less, we're in. I'm not going to tell players that, because then, oh, okay, we're just going to play not to lose by a lot, and then we'll lose by a lot.
Yep.
where we had played this team, Elite Futsal is their name. They're based out of Charleston. Kevin Jackson's the director, does a tremendous job. Again, they've been at it, 10 or 12 years. So they've done a great job of building culture in the game. And a lot of the players we faced, started as our little ballers, and they've been in the program and been on the ball for 6-7 years. And it shows for sure in their play. Where this group had played that group last year at regionals. And I believe I didn't coach that game. It wouldn't have mattered if I did. We could have had, the head of Brazil futsal coach. It wouldn't have mattered. I think our team lost 15-1, something like that.
Okay.
And we're battling Sunday night for a result to advance to the regional final the next day. And we were winning and tied for 38 minutes. And we were tied with, I want to say, 4 minutes to go. We ended up losing by a few goals, but just to be able to go from 15-1 to pretty even, says a lot, not about me or us, but about like the kids where we had on that team. We had 2003 boy, 2003 boy, 2003 boy, 2004 boy, 2004 boy, 2004 non-boy or a girl, and then 2006 boy. So that was our roster playing against all 2003 boys that had been playing futsal for, several years. And our group battled, where, I mean, that's something like I told them, did we play, cleanly and perfectly the whole game? No, but like you gave everything you had. And ultimately, like that's all you can control, at that point in time.
Those opportunities to kind of, like you said, just being a satellite, you kind of don't know what else is out there.
Yep.
So for you all to go and say, look, and then you can tell them like that group you just played, number one, you guys have already made up some distance on them from last year by putting in the work that you've been doing here in Birmingham. And number two, they're at the level that they're at because they've been at it for so long. So just continue to keep working at it. And it's a great thing for them to then go back to Birmingham and start telling when the young lady goes back and says, hey, we need to keep playing. We need to keep playing more. And the youngest one, the 06 boy, starts talking to his 06 buddies, like, let's just keep rocking and rolling because we want to go to regionals because we can hang. Is a huge type of thing. What's the next step, if there is a step? Where's Birmingham futsal go from here, do you think, in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
I mean, in terms of our goal is, again, to not gravitate too far away from like kind of our why, like why we started our program. So it's not like we're going to necessarily do anything groundbreaking or different or anything like that. We have some other programs like, we've incorporated like the game and sport and activity of like tech ball, just because again, futsal, obviously for technical development of player, for ball on the ground, for those type of skills, really, really good. Ball isn't in the air a ton. So, being able to kind of help players maybe deal with that aspect of their game. In terms of tech ball, which is basically like the soccer ping pong game for those that are watching or listening that may not, be that familiar with it. Again, super fun. The more skilled you are, the more fun it is. If you're not very skilled, you end up turning into fitness and chasing the ball the whole time, which is not the goal. And we've also incorporated through relationships that we have with my buddy at Barefoot Futsal in Charlotte, some freestyle. So again, trying to give players opportunities where you can live life and play the games on your terms, whatever the game is. So there are some players that are really good on the court and maybe struggle in the outdoor because they're not super athletic and can't cover distance, and then vice versa. There are some players that like we brought in, Boyko Ortiz is his name, from Colombia, not South Carolina, as I tell our Southerners, but like the actual country of Colombia, where we brought him in for 4 days, and he worked with our players, and he's ranked as the 3rd or 4th best freestyler in the world, where he's gotten to the Red Bull World Championships like 6-7 years in a row, and like seeing somebody where he does his, I'd introduce him, blah, 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 video it. And the timestamp at the end of his first performance was 4 minutes and 32 seconds, and the ball never hit the ground. And he wasn't juggling with just his feet. He was juggling with his shoulder and his ears and his nostrils and every single body part you could imagine. Handstand and juggle with his feet. It was amazing. So just again, how many times can we reinstill that 6-year-old Boyka in Medellin, Colombia, never thought he'd be able to do that, but he can, because he put the time in and he put the work in. So 6-year-old, 11-year-old kid in Birmingham like to your point, we're on a satellite, so we get a false sense, whether it's our game or outdoor game, that like we're like good, we're good for here,
Hmm.
but know that in markets where there's more players, they can kind of sharpen iron,
Yeah.
because you have to bring your best if you're going to be on the top team at a certain outdoor club in an Atlanta or a Charlotte, because there's just more players, which we can't control that. Which I'm not a very big believer in player pool anyway. Obviously, the more players there are, the more better players, etc. But I think culture is what matters most, because we can't just all of a sudden snap our fingers and have 20,000 kids here. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So we can sit around and try to, complain about it, or we can control what we can control, and just try to train and put in the time and put in the work and get as good as we can.
So what does your typical day look like right now with Birmingham futsal for you?
So starting in, let me think, the last Monday of November, so kind of the Monday after Thanksgiving, that started our winter season, which that's 7 days a week. So I'll go Monday. I'll make it quick. Monday we're on the court, so we start at 4:30. So I would get there 3:30, make sure everything is set up. We have music in every session and every game. Um, Training, we keep the music loud to kind of keep them engaged and make them like communicate and all that. The music is a little lower for games because we don't want to blast out mom and dad and grandma who may be watching. But we're there basically 3:30 all the way through. We would have some youth sessions, 4:30 to 6:37, and then our little ballers, our 4 and 5, 6-year-olds till 7:30. Then we would have a break, and then adults would come in from 8:30 to 10:30. So basically, for 7 hours, we're on the courts with ages 4 up to adult. In the mornings, from 9, 10-ish until noon or whatever, it's admin, coaching, education, carpal tunnel, emails, and social media, and
Yeah.
and that fun stuff. And then the same thing on Tuesday, and then Thursday. On Wednesday, we wouldn't have folks on our courts. There's been an outdoor futsal court that's available, and one of the local Latino and Hispanic leagues started that. So we have our first team, which again has been my goal, is to have from age 4 all the way up, through our academy from 7, 8, 9 to high school. Now we have a first team where it's a lot of the better players, the more committed guys and girls that have been coming in to play pickup. So now, like, I actually have 1 or 2 that they like soccer, but they like futsal more, and they don't want to go play college soccer. So they're like, what's an opportunity for me? So we're trying to kind of create that and offer that opportunity where we play in a league here that just started. That league in February, March will grow. We'll use our facility and another couple of facilities as well. So that'll begin to grow. So that's Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday, we have our academy practice as a team and group. And then Friday night, like tonight, from 6:30 till 9, we'll have winter league games. And then Saturday, Sunday, all day, we'll have winter league games. I think this is our last weekend. So we'll have, I think, 19 games this weekend. So again, the winter, as it is everywhere across the U.S., kind of, futsal is like a winter sport, which for most people it still is here. But every year as we end our winter, we'll gain 6, 8, 10, maybe 12 kids into our year-round program that just never knew it existed, and never even knew the game existed, much less like, wait, I can do this like year-round. I'm like, did you have fun? Did it make you better? Why would you stop just because now the weather's better? Like, it makes no sense, you know? So when we kind of talk to parents that way, they're like, yeah, you're right. It doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, we want to do it. So once the spring hits in a couple of weeks, the schedule will slow down some. We won't be 7 days a week. We'll be more like 5 or 6. We'll actually get a day off. Maybe, we'll see. But again, it's not really, it's not even really work. Like, people ask, like, my dad's like, hey, so like, doing a lot. I'm like, I'm doing a lot, but I'm not, because it's like fun, like just talking to you and trying to help whoever hears this, if they can have some level of, glean anything from this, of any type of resource, I'm here to help, whether it's coaches or kids or parents, just try to find a better opportunity and better situation.
This whole conversation has been so awesome because it's all of this just come about by just your kind of idea and a conversation with your buddy. And it's just kind of grown, and then you've just kind of said, well, now the kids like it, what other things can we add to the mix? And the fact that it's gone from, we found a place to have it, to now we have like an outside group of Latino, which again, one of the things that I think sadly we have priced out is socioeconomic. Is just there are people, for instance, the Hispanic, community is
Mhm,
continually priced out of the experience of the soccer game that they love. And I know in this my community, they're always at the parks playing,
mhm.
but they're having to make up. They're bringing like sticks and stuff to make us the goalposts and stuff. So that's my kind of premise of what can I create where they can just pull up, hop out of the car, and we can play, and it's all set up. And I think that the fact that you've got that relationship where they're coming to you, man, that's huge. And then, like you said earlier, with all the different nationalities and what have you. But
Well, and it
uh,
was the first, like that's to me, I had to not sell them, but I had to deliver that specific population you just spoke about, like an authentic experience. Because in our community, they see someone who looks like me, who's
mm,
affiliated with a sports organization, whether it be obviously with them, usually it's a soccer club, and they've been told and they've been pitched and they've been sold things like for years, but it hasn't happened, or it's happened for a year and then it's gone away, or it's happened for this family because their kid's really good, but not the others because it's a gatekeeper mentality that drives the system. Whereas, like for me, they would come in, it's like, hey, like, can we check it out? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. And they expected me to say no. It's like, yeah, like I know what that means. Like, you want to see if the game's any good because if there's a fee attached to it, you want to make sure you're getting a return on your investment. Like that to me, that just makes sense.
yeah,
I'm not going to say, oh, you've got to give me, we're gonna play a movie. It's $20. You don't want to know what movie. I'm not going to tell you. Well, then you're not going to go. You know, if it's the kind of movie you like, you'll pay. If it's not, you won't. So, that was something where we started out, and over time, where I spoke zero Spanish, now it's un poco, you
mhm,
know, but it's like over time, and I'll try to speak as much as I can to them, just like I want to learn from you. I want to be one of you, you
mhm.
know. I don't expect you to adapt who you are or change who you are at all. Because I think a lot of that happens socially, just, you know, because that's the way the world is, versus like I'll change slightly who I am so that we can have a better relationship and so that I'll be on your level, so to speak.
Um, so you were talking earlier about sharing ideas and people using you as a resource. As we get to the end here and wrap this up, what's a great way? What's the best ways for people to connect with you if they've got questions, or if they, maybe there's a futsal club out there that hears about this, like, dude, we'd love to do something with you.
Yeah. So on Twitter, it's T and then Tillette. So last name. So T and then Tillette. And then Birmingham Futsal. It's either Birmingham Futsal or like BHM, which is the kind of airport code. Futsal, kind of depending on the platform, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, um, even TikTok, things like that. We try to put as much content out there as we can. And again, we're an open book where we've been very fortunate to have folks who kind of came before us, um, help. And that's one thing. As like you asked, who's coaching the teams? We have myself and a couple of part-time folks who have players who are either still playing or kind of recently stopped playing, where I had a good relationship with them and trained them for years. So I was comfortable, with them. They were comfortable with us. And then my wife has done an awesome job coming on this fall and winter to help as well, where she came to regionals and was a huge help because last year I think I coached 18 games in 30 hours, and from 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday until 9 p.m., 13 hours, I coached 11. So I only had like 2 blocks, and those blocks were to get from this facility to that facility.
Mhm.
So they were like, do you want us to bring you lunch? I was like, no, because I won't have time to eat it. And I'm not going to eat like a burrito, like while coaching your kid, that's not appropriate. So I'll just snack it up until I can actually eat dinner. So that's another thing I've tried to do is, to deliver quality experience, you need quality people, good people, but also, and most importantly, people who will put the players and the kids first and not forget, that ultimately it's about them, put our own egos at the door. Yeah, we want to win. Yeah, we want to reach and have these accolades, but like we have someone's son and daughter in front of us, that's our captive audience. And, you know, so that's what we've tried to do is keep that in mind and try to help as many kids we can.
Has your wife, just we haven't even got into that, but has your wife been supportive of this entire kind of uh, thing that you've gotten into with the futsal?
Probably unwillingly. No, no, she's been amazing for sure. Where, I mean, I don't know if you know, I'm fully supportive of like what she wants to do in her career, whether it's stay in Birmingham or elsewhere, to maybe like a better opportunity at a university or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and, vice versa, where she kind of knew that I was passionate about it and knew, and her being in the game, she kind of saw a need for it as well. Um, so she's been very, very supportive, which makes for some long nights and long hours for sure, where I work again from 3:30 until 11:30. Luckily she's on the field, so she works from 4:30 to 9:30. If we had kind of different schedules, if she had an 8 to 5 job, maybe it wouldn't work because we
Yeah.
never see each other, or maybe that'd be better. I don't know. Who knows?
Tristan, this has been awesome. There's so many, and I will have to follow up because I know we've kind of just hit the tip of the iceberg on this, but I really wanted, like I said, almost selfishly for myself, was to kind of find out like when you had this dream, what were some of the things that you went to? And the one thing I've heard is just kind of networking, being willing to ask people like what they think. And then just the big idea of just going after something that you're passionate about. So you've made some huge decisions. I know life decisions when it came to the coaching, when it came to your previous job in the corporate world, where you said, you know what, I'm going to try to transition a different way and make an impact in a different way. So I really appreciate you being on with me.
For
Let
sure.
me set,
Thanks for
let
having
me
me.
set this thing down, and then we'll. Hey, this is Kieran, Coach's Corner Chats, and I'm out. Peace.